Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Mighty Stream. I'm going to do your July the 29th spiritual principle a day in a meditation. I hope you're having a wonderful morning. The title of this meditation is Being Prudent with Our Obligations. We learn to take on obligations thoughtfully to ensure that we can follow through on what we've promised. That comes from the Living Clean book, chapter 6, Money. Looking back at our active addiction, most of us can see a clear theme. Moderation was not a strength for us. If something is enjoyable, worthwhile, valuable in any way, why not get as much as we possibly can of that thing? The fact that we never seemed to be satisfied was a crippling weakness for most of us. We draw lines in the sand for ourselves over and over, and then we stumbled across them by doing things we said we would never do. In recovery, some of us find our lack of satisfaction can be almost like a hidden superpower. We raise the bar higher and higher for ourselves, leaping over past achievements by doing things we thought we could never do. Being difficult to satisfy can prompt some of us to achieve a lot in recovery. However, we are still addicts and we run the risk of spreading ourselves too thin. We may be inclined to think of prudence as being careful with our money, which is a difficult lesson most of us must learn at some point in our recovery. However, prudence can apply to any resource we have, including our time and attention. One member found himself struggling to fulfill his NA commitments because people told me I could never say no to NA requests. He recalls his sponsor telling him, if you're feeling overcommitted, practice prudence by learning to say no to NA requests that get in the way of fulfilling other commitments you've already made. Our disease tells us if one is good, more is better. Prudence helps us to say no or not yet when that positive, fulfilling thing we want to do or be doesn't fit on our full plate. If we finish what we have, we can go back for seconds. I cannot be everywhere or do everything. I will practice prudence in my commitments by acknowledging my limitations. Let's take a moment of silence, followed by the wee version of the Serenity Prayer. Moment of silence now, please. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today, please and thank you. That is a powerful meditation. Prudence, because people do think of prudence being applicable to finances, right? Saving your money, using it wisely, putting some up for a rainy day, buying those things you need and not always those things that you want. However, the spiritual principle of prudence is a spiritual principle that can be applied to mostly anything, just like love, just like faith, hope, joy, peace. Prudence is a spiritual principle. And the core of prudence is deeply rooted in modesty. I would say humility, but I think it's more rooted in modesty. Having awareness of what your limitations are and only taking on what you can actually afford to take on. Applying prudence to time, and energy is important. Because a lot of times what happens is that people will guilt trip you into taking on more than you actually can handle. And in the moment of the uncomfortability, the time and attention, right, that is required to do whatever you're being guilt tripped into doing, sometimes you'll say yes when you actually mean no. And the actuality of it is you only have so much time. And so at some point in time, what tends to happen is if you've taken on a commitment on top of all of your other commitments, and you don't really have time to do justice to that commitment, that new one, because your plate is full, you end up dropping the ball on that added commitment. And it becomes known to yourself and everyone affected by it that you really just don't have the time for it. I recently went through something like that where I took on the commitment because it was needed. Someone had to hold that responsibility. And I didn't really think it would be very time consuming because obviously I'm working on my master's degree in internship, right? And what I found was that because my plate was never clear, it was always full anyways. Everything related to this commitment just seemed to not always get all of me because I couldn't give any more of me, right? The day that I woke up and realized that who I owe, right? I owe God and I owe myself and I owe these children and my husband. That's who I owe in this world as it is now. Every other thing is icing on the cake. When I woke up with that realization, things began to change for me, right? My joy came back because I was now able to, anything that was extra, I was able to say that's extra, and I just can't do that, right? Even when it comes to sponsoring people, I put a limitation on what I can do and when I'll do it, right? If I'm sponsoring someone, I'm still committed to that. If you're committed to it. But if you're not committed to it, then I'm not committed to it, right? I don't get to sponsor you if you're not being sponsored, right? So I've learned that what I can change, I change. And when I say yes to something, I truly mean it. But I also truly mean it when I say no to something. Because I need to maintain that level of self-integrity and loyalty and responsibility to all of the other stuff that I've ever said yes to that's still on my plate. And when those things get removed off of my plate, I was talking to someone and I was saying, yeah, Wednesday is a horrible day, right? For anything, because I start out super early. As you see, it's 5:16 and I'm on my second podcast. I start out in the studio super early on Wednesday. I don't sleep any sooner than 11 o'clock at night because class gets out at 10 p.m., right? It's a super long day. And generally, what has happened is that because of poor time management, I have tons of homework that's actually due by 6 p.m. before I go into class. So Wednesday is usually a day where I'm digging in the books, trying to figure out what references to use if I have to do some sort of taping for class. It would be a lot easier. Like today is a beautiful weekend, beginning a beautiful weekend. if I would just tackle some of those things that need to be done before class on Wednesday. And I will. I think I'll be further ahead this week than I was last week. But I just figured out there's only so much time. And if I say yes to something on Wednesday, I really am already thinking about how hard it's going to be to actually fulfill that. And so I try not to commit to anything on Wednesday. Right. And so recently, my calendar had to clear out so that I could have time to, or not have time, but have an office actually to see the clients, right? I was struggling with getting offices available so that I can actually see the clients that are scheduled. So I just decided, you know what? Let me just clear this particular, it's inconvenient anyway. Why not just clear the calendar completely off so I don't have to worry about that? But you know what always happens? There's those individuals that they cannot budge their time, right? They can't. And you already made the commitment to see them on that day. So what do? Yeah, clearing my calendar sounds wonderful, but it's impossible to completely clear it, which means I still need to drive a certain length of distance to get to the center to counsel. And if I'm going to be there, I may as well be invested, right? And so sometimes when someone says, "Well, can I you see me on a Wednesday?" No, I'm not adding any new people. And those that absolutely cannot adjust, I will continue to see them on that day. But I am the one that has the plate that is full. They may too, they may also have a full plate. But what I've committed to is what I'm responsible for. And as things begin to clear up, I can start to breathe. So this one individual asked me about being seen on a Wednesday. And I told them after I graduate, right, and I no longer have a class that ends at 10 p.m., I will definitely be able to open that schedule up where I would be able to see you on the most convenient day for you. That was so hard to have to say. But that is a part of being prudent. That's just a small example, just a very, very, very small example. So today, I want for you to go back through this meditation and think about your time and attention as being a resource, just like money, that you need to be prudent over. Remember that you cannot be everywhere and do everything for everyone. You can barely do it for yourself, right? That's a reality. Practice prudence in your commitments by acknowledging your limitations. To me, that's prudence, but it's also modesty. My name is MightyStream. I've enjoyed talking to you today. I hope that you will have a beautiful day on purpose. I intend to talk to you soon.